Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 214. I'm Enigmius and today it's blueprint day for the USS Discovery hybrid. It's basically the Discovery with the saucer section and the nacelles, with a little bit of the Shenzhou thrown in with the position of the nacelles kind of down and swept forward and instead of swept back like on the Discovery. And the central hull section is my design. It would have been all about the Discovery, except it wouldn't fit in the space that the game allowed us. So this episode is all about a tour of the ship, what you can expect from it, what you can do with it, and then you can go get the blueprint if you want to do that. The link for the blueprint will be in the information box below the video. I would encourage you also, if you're getting the blueprint, to read the description for the ship that's included with the blueprint, so that you have a written sort of record of things that you need to consider if this is the ship you're going to use. First of all, the ship itself is mobile. You can fly it around, it moves, it has everything that's necessary for that: fuel, tanks, generators, thrusters, RCS units, whatever you need is there. And that's about it. All of the other functional things that you might want in a ship are things that you will probably have to consider adding yourself based on what you want the ship to be doing, whether you want it to be as close to the actual as possible, understanding that it's already a hybrid, but there are other similarities that you could try and work into it, or something that's as functional as possible. One of the things that kind of crossed my mind that might make this ship sort of interesting is using it as like a scenario ship, where you would finish it off to create a situation, and then you would have the people participating in the scenario doing certain things in order to accomplish certain goals, or whatever you want to do. So that's an option. It's certainly large enough to have a very lengthy scenario based on the amount of space that you have to work with and the things that you can do. So we're going to start with the saucer section, which is basically the Discovery's saucer section. It's got the central sphere right here where the bridge is located. It's also where the ship's core is now located. It's also got the split rings. The actual Discovery in the series, the rings rotate independently of one another, which is really kind of a cool feature. Obviously, the game doesn't provide us with the means to do that, but the concept is still captured in the way that things are laid out. The interior of the smaller ring, the one right here, is partially complete structurally. I'm just going to scoot down in here so that I can show you, if I can show you. Turn on the lights and the lights. There's only one floor, and that's the floor on the bottom. And then you've got all of these walls, and you've got 4 layers of walls that comprise rooms. The whole section is divided up into rooms, a total of 192 of them. If you wanted to finish this, all you would really need to do is paint, texture, and furnish the rooms as you see fit. Most of them will need doors as well. And then add in the floors in between the rooms. And you can see it's very clear where the floors need to go. There's a gap for where each floor can go. I set it up this way so that when I was doing the structural parts of the rooms, putting in all of the walls, that I wasn't getting confused between floors because I had floors in the way. So having them all open like this made it a lot quicker and easier for me to build in the walls, and that would also probably be the case if you're texturing and painting, being able to go through the various different parts of the ship, all the different layers, and then add the floors after when you don't need to be moving around through the room so much. That's an option. The outer ring, nothing. There's nothing in here. It's entirely incomplete. You can do whatever you want with it. The central sphere here, we have the bridge, which is a little bit larger than the Discovery's bridge. I was watching the latest episode the other day, and the actual Discovery's bridge is certainly more compact than this. I think it has a lot to do with the size of the consoles and the cockpit chair and stuff like that. When I had it in my mind when I was putting it together, it seemed to be much smaller than it actually is. So you've got a lot of room in here. If you want to remodel, you can do whatever you want. That's sort of the thing. Below there is the ship's core down in here. and it's sort of held together with this sci-fi sort of experience. I started working on it, I started finishing it off, and then I realized that realistically speaking, unless you have a reason to go looking for the core, or if you're doing the scenario thing, you want to send people to the core, not a lot of people are going to be spending a lot of time in here. So I just sort of decided to leave it as it is. If you wanted to finish it off and you weren't sure how to do that, you've got some examples of what I started to do here, different shapes and things that you could carry on through to the other walls, just kind of smooth it off. Whatever it takes, whatever floats your boat, that's the option available to you. Now, while we're here talking about the saucer section, we might as well talk about weapons. Which you'll notice are completely absent from this ship, and there's two reasons for that. One, if I were to weaponize this ship based on its behavior in the series and stuff, I wouldn't even know, to be completely honest, where precisely to put the weapons. If I were to try and do it based on something that fits in the Star Trek universe, I would place the weapons around the rings. Similar to the way you see a lot of ships when they fire their phasers, there's like a great big ring, and it sort of charges up, and then the phaser is emitted from the point closest to their target, sort of thing. That would be the sort of thing that I would want to duplicate, and then I would consider putting missile-like weapons, rockets, or whatever, in places where you would expect to see photon torpedoes fore and aft, that sort of thing. If I was looking to place weapons for the sake of making the ship as functional as possible in, say, a multiplayer environment, it would be completely different. I would be looking at placing weapons sort of so that there were no blind spots, or the minimum number of blind spots. There would, if you were attacking this ship, no matter where you went, there would be the option for something to be firing at you, which is kind of a very subjective decision, because that means that your weapons would be very spread out on a ship of this size, and you wouldn't actually be very strong in any one area, which could be problematic. So there's decisions to be made if you're wanting to weaponize the ship about what sort of outcome you're wanting to achieve. The ship, I think, is maneuverable enough that you could afford to center the weapons in a certain area so that you bring those weapons to bear on a particular target, and the ship is very, very strong, and if you can't reach them based on where the weapons are, you're in a position to move the ship, rotate the ship, whatever you need to do, position it so that the weapons are in range. That would be, to me, the best sort of situation. Given how many RCS units there are on the ship and where they're located, how far apart they are, they're basically in the front of the nacelles. The chances of being disabled to the extent that you could no longer move the ship, you would have to be under attack from more than one target, and they'd have to be specifically targeting that area of the ship in order for them to be able to stop you from doing that. So there's considerations for people who are wanting to weaponize the ship that I've just explained, so that you got an idea of what you're walking into, if that's sort of one of your goals. So now, we've covered the saucer section. Basically, if you want to get from one ring of the saucer section to the other, or vice versa, you've got these areas here that are quite obvious. They're basically hollow connections that you can pass through to get one way or the other. If you want to get from the bridge to the saucer section, you come down here. You may want to put a door right here. It's up to you. You pass through here, and then you've got a choice. You can go straight across and continue that way, or you can go down, fork off to either side, go down, and then all the way over to here where there's an elevator, and then these elevators will take you down into the small saucer section, small ring of the saucer section. We're just going to get rid of the glare a bit. And again, unfinished, do what you want with it. But it was important for me to have that ability for people who are not using God mode to fly around, or jetpacks, so that they can get to the various different places on the ship. So there's that option there. Currently, the only way to get from the bridge to the saucer section is via this route, which is not so bad. It's fairly straightforward. And then if we stay on the top part, instead of going down either side, we get to sort of this part in here. It's a very long hallway because we're basically walking along the spine of the ship, the very top back section, all the way down. Being that there are no turbolifts in the game, this is sort of what we're left with, the option that we have available to us. And then we get to an elevator, which kind of looks like that from the outside. Again, it's unfinished, and it's got some indicators for you if you wanted to start adding floors. This is the main hull section. We have up here the warp drive. You can build around it, whatever you want to do. It felt important, again, to include this with the ship. You can take it off, you can move it, whatever you want. This is the back of the deflector dish and the main hull section. Lots of work to be done if you wanted to finish the interior, but it's not difficult work. You can sort of see where 45-degree slope blocks would go to sort of smooth this off, and you can see corners and things like that. It wouldn't be a particularly demanding thing, just a little bit time-consuming because of the size. And then also you have access from here to the hangar bay. We've got some stairs and things like that. I was just kind of goofing around, adding that in. Again, something you might want to close off and add doors. And then the hangar bay is actually currently the only way to enter the ship from the outside without cutting a hole in the ship. So that's something else to keep in mind if you wanted to add more entrances. There's nothing saying that you can't do that, but if you're not using God mode and you get the ship and you're wondering how to get in without cutting holes, this is how you do it. We've got force fields, kind of handy, covering the whole thing. And then if you want to get to the nacelles from the central area of the ship, then you come down here. We've got these hollow arms holding the nacelles. And then from a functional perspective, we've got fuel tanks, we've got gravity generators that I kind of did up. I mentioned in the last episode we have this kaleidoscope effect. If you don't like it, you can just change these lights in here, take them out, change the color, dim them down, whatever you want to do. And then over here we've got our generators hiding behind combat steel and armored glass. Probably finished the paint job. Thrusters. This is the front of the nacelle here. It's got the glowing red dome sort of effect that I really wanted to duplicate, and once I finished it off inside, I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Given that there's no option to have translucent panels or anything like that, it does the job. It kind of mimics the feature that we were trying to mimic. And then all the way down here, past the fuel tanks, encased in more armored glass, are the oxygen tanks. There are no oxygen vents anywhere on the ship. So if you want to pressurize the ship, you can immediately. There's nothing that you have to patch up. There are no holes that you have to fill in order to pressurize the ship. You may want to compartmentalize the ship with doors and things of that nature, but you can add the ventilation wherever you want, and as long as these things are filled with some sort of oxygen, you'll be fine. You'll be able to pressurize the ship, and it's no big deal. Believe it or not, for all the work, for all the time that went into building this thing, that's it. That's the tour. If I had finished the interior, obviously there would be more to show off, but again, it's going to be a very time-consuming undertaking for anyone who wants to completely finish the interior. Maybe that's what some people are looking for, is a little project they can take on where the exterior is basically done for them, but the interior is basically a blank canvas. Do whatever you want with it. The one thing that I wanted to do before we said, okay, get the blueprint and have fun, is I wanted to fly this into atmosphere and see if we can't function. I'm not sure if we can. We've got lots of thrusters. You see all these little thrusters here and a great big circle on the top and on the underside of the outer saucer ring. I don't think those are going to be enough lift to keep us afloat in atmosphere, but there's also lots of room to add more thrusters for lift for that specific purpose of going into atmosphere if that's what you wanted to do. It's no big deal. As you can see, or as you will see, when we get into the ship itself, we use a very small percentage of the power output that's available to us to maneuver with what we've currently got. So we're going to hop into the captain's seat here. We're going to switch our view to the outside of the ship, which this is sometimes the best way to get a look at a ship of this size, is something like this. One thing that you'll notice if you aren't, or if you haven't experienced this sort of thing before, the farther away you are, the fewer the lights you will see. This view, for example, we're too far away from the ship to see any of the lights. We can see a little bit of the glow from the thrusters, and that's about it. You can see the deflector dish. Actually, we should hop out and just quickly look at that in case you didn't see it when it's lit up. See, when you get close, it's got some lighting and it's got some shiny sparkly things going on, blue and red lights. I find it quite interesting when it's done that way. The texture is one of the newer textures. It's got sort of like those little mirrored kind of discs, and we actually have to get a bit of distance before it starts to show. But you get the idea. The lighting can be kind of interesting, but if you get too far away, you don't see it. So it's just something to keep in mind if you're looking at it from a distance and you're kind of disappointed that it seems to look a little bit dull. You just have to get up a little bit closer. So we are going to head in the direction of Omicron. And you can see this ship is basically on the horizontal plane as well as the depth. It's the maximum that the game will allow in terms of size, and it maneuvers quite well. It's got about 2,000 RCS units in it. That's why. That's sort of the thing. For propulsion thrusters, you can see we've got thrusters in the back of the nacelles. We've also got a few thrusters in the back of the main hull section. Then, of course, the little thrusters that are on the edge of the saucer section are also contributing to a certain amount of motion, forward motion. Basically, all thrusters firing forward, we're using 8% of our maximum power output. If we go all thrusters forward plus up is 10%, 12% for forward and to the sides, and now we're kind of heading into the gravity well, it would appear. So we're not having to use as much power to go down. I guess we're getting a little bit of help. I have a feeling we're going to bounce. I think that's going to be the ultimate end game for this, and it'll be a good little experiment so that you can see what's going on. The acceleration on the ship for forward directions is not bad. The deceleration is also not bad, but you're not going to be stopping on a dime. Lateral movement, side to side, the acceleration is not great, but nor is it horrible. We're just going to kind of nose down a bit here so that we settle into the atmosphere as we ought to. Can't see anything through the clouds. And we're safely into the atmosphere. Getting out of the clouds, we can see a little more clearly what's going on. We're up to 32% of maximum power. That's moving forward fairly slowly, and it's hard to say whether or not we are. It looks like we're descending. Actually, no, it doesn't. We're ascending. Actually, no, we're descending because sorry. I'm looking at the number beside orbit and not making the connection that it's orbit and not altitude. And here we go. We're sinking like a stone, maybe. So we've got good roll. Oh, we found a shuttle hub. Maybe we can walk. Maybe the ship was designed to walk across the landscape. That would appear to be a working strategy. I'm holding down space and forward right now, so if we were capable of ascending, we would be, and we're not ascending. So that's something to keep in mind. But we can still get some very slow forward movement, and of course we can move the ship around however we like. Keeping in mind how large the ship is and what the game is willing to tolerate in terms of processing power while rendering a planet, you can see a little bit of stutter despite our best intentions. And it would appear that to at least some extent we bounced there. We were scraping along the ground, and then all of a sudden we were out amongst the clouds. That was about the end of it. So there you have it. A little test of the ship not faring so well in gravity, but I wasn't really expecting it to. It was something that I kind of thought of, and other people had sort of reinforced the idea that they would like to see what happens if you fly the ship into gravity. Maybe that's why we weren't working in such a efficient manner, is because we had this great big wall in the way. The ship's reverse capability, not fantastic, but as I pointed out when we were looking at the ship's first movement, this isn't a vessel that was designed to be parallel parked. It also wasn't designed to be reversed out of the artificial barrier, which we couldn't even see from behind the ship because it's so large. We're so far away. And let's... oh, V. There we go. Let's see, can we accelerate past this. I don't know if we're going to be able to get much altitude. Or maybe we can. If we tilt far enough. The game is thinking very hard. We might have enough thrust to actually get out of here. That drone, that poor little drone, doesn't really quite know what to do. If I was that drone, I'd be pretty terrified too. Let's see. Yeah, we're actually ascending. So you can't really maneuver around and maintain a specific altitude, but if you wanted to fly into the atmosphere, do something silly, and then fly back out, you can do that just by angling the ship upwards, and you have enough thrust that you can, from all appearances, escape the gravity well. Not quickly. We're at 16.9 meters per second, but it's possible. That's the thing. So there's going to be one more Empyrion episode coming out, and it's going to be a bit of a surprise. We're going to have that out in the next 2 or 3 days, and then we'll be moving on to Avorion, which is basically going to be the same kind of content, building ships and doing stuff. There's a fair bit of things to do in Avorion in terms of actual gameplay above and beyond building ships that's a little bit different from Empyrion. So there's probably going to be some gameplay elements to that series, at least to a certain extent. Not necessarily all the time, not necessarily throughout the length of that series, but there's different things going on, things to be aware of. And if you want to be notified about the next and last Empyrion episode and everything that comes after that, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. We're back into space. We're clear. We're all clear. We survived. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.